Hey, it's Matt. I'm going to walk you through a video of using this here, the streaming system. Set the board up and loaded basic band. Make sure that preset always gets loaded because that has all of the Dante mappings that map all the way down to this. If the guitarist plugs into the keyboard, it's going to show up as keyboard there. It's going to show up as keyboard here. It's going to be on the keyboard submix. Just if you screw it up on stage, then there's a lot of dominoes that fall cascade after that. So, get all those inputs correct there, and then your life here will be really easy. That's my first word of advice. Okay, let's get this thing turned on. Sorry for the cord draping through here, but my phone is a little lower on battery, so I figured best to not run out of power. All right, while filming, the monitor power button is right here. You can see the little light, and then the Mac Mini is over here. There's a power button back here on this back corner. Turn it on. You can see the power button the power light turned on there. You can see that just barely. Come over a little bit. There it is. It's so faint. All right, this is the Dante audio interface. Ethernet comes in, and then USB comes out, and it goes into here. There's a headphone output on there, but we actually plug the headphones into this other audio interface because that way you can use this little jog wheel to raise and lower the volume. So if you're down here listening to the service and then you're like, oh, I need to solo that, you can solo something, crank the volume up, so you can hear it, and then when you're done, crank it back down, turn the solo back off. Again, this volume control with this surface and the faders, we're really trying to make it as tactile as possible, so you don't have to use the keyboard and the mouse as little as possible. All right, the system's turned on. It's streaming audio user, and we got to enter the password. The password is the same as the passphrase to join the guest Wi-Fi, which is God is love. Hit enter to log in. It's probably going to launch Logic, and it's going to automatically load the worship service template. So, boom, there you are. You're up and running, and it's all loaded. And so now that that's in place, you can think about bringing in these guys here for your controls. So what I tend to do is I tend to turn them both on at the same time. They're a little buggy where they launch in kind of this read-only mode sometimes, and if that happens, just keep cycling them off and on and cycling back on. So I'm going to power them on a second here. Sorry for this. Oh, I should tell you, the power buttons are here and here on the back. All right, let's power these guys on. So they're going to power up. There's going to be a message that displays in Logic because these actually show up as MIDI interfaces. All right, you can see that the scribble strips on the top are blank right now. But when I touch the faders, it is working. You can see it moves back and forth to the different channels, and if you let this sit for a second, it should. Yep, see, now it's all populated. So this one could be I've seen it where this works and this doesn't. So let's try this one. This one works. You're all good. That's a good way to test if it doesn't follow your movement, or if you bring a slider down and it like brings the sliders back up on its own because it's like in read-only mode and it wants to return to where it is. Power it off, wait a couple seconds, power it on again, and see if that fixes it. Okay. These are on the latest firmware from Behringer. I've been watching for new firmware to come out to see if that fixes the bug, because that's all that I can think is at this point. All right, so here you are. You're loaded in. You can see we actually got audio signal on the congregation mics coming in, and if I scroll over here with the mouse, you can actually see it's showing up over here. This video submix track has a little line through the solo. If you can see that, a little red line. I know my phone isn't focusing. That means it's marked for solo safe. That means you can solo any of these other channels and audio will still flow to this, which flows to the outputs 3 and 4, which goes to the streaming computer. And so let's solo Pew mic number 2, and when we do, you can see video submix and outputs 3 and 4 are still seeing something, but stereo out is not seeing anything. And then it's back on. So that tells us that this is working properly. There's a dummy track here, and this is a bug in Logic where it'll mark this as solo safe. Don't worry about it. We need the dummy track for other reasons, for spacing of the faders to make it nice and even, so don't worry about that. All right, so the goal here is really you're mixing with the submixes. So we've got drum verb, key verb, piano delay, guitar verb, guitar delay, vox verb, vox delay, drum submix, bass submix, key submix, guitar submix, loop submix. We've added that in as a placeholder in case the worship teams start using loops. I know Nicole has asked me about it and about the loops that I've used in the past. Vox submix, speaking submix, that means lav and pew mics, and then congregation submixes. That's really just this channel, but that way it's all next to each other. Video submix, you don't want to touch that one because that's the overall volume that's going to the video system. So you want to leave that where it is. It's at -1.3. It's just about at unity. All right, so let's talk about the surface. As you can see, you touch these different ones. The scribble strips show you what it is. So if it's Vox 4 and I want to mute it, I can mute it. Well, I muted Vox 5 there. And then you can solo it, or you could solo a bunch if you wanted. You can use that just like as if it was a mixer interface. If vocal 1 needs to be louder and vocal 2 needs to be softer, you can see that's reflected right here on the screen. And then if I bring them back up, so that's all reflected in real time. Now, what you really want to do, there's these buttons over here, the fader bank and the channel bank. You want to go all the way to the right and then hit this button to go backwards 5 times. And I'll show you why you want to do that. 3, 4, 5. Oh, no, only 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you do that, now you will have the dummy track, which is just a filler. Then you will have 7 effects returns here, and then you will have 8 submixes: drums, bass, keys, guitars, loops, vox, speaking, and congregation. So basically, these are sort of like DCAs. They're submixes. The audio comes to these and then flows through these to wherever it's going. But that's kind of the idea, so that you can work here as minimally as possible and you don't need to worry about all of the other channels that virtually extend this way. If you want to, though, these are all laid out in groups of 16. So if I hit the channel bank twice and go over here, you can see 1 through 8 is kick, snare, hi-hat, toms, right? So these are the 8 drum channels, and then we've got bass, guitar 1, guitar 2, guitar 3, piano high and low, keys, and loops. I hit it for another set of 16, and now I have vocals 1 through 8 right here on this slave unit. And then I have lav 1, lav 2, pew mic 1, pew mic 2, and congregation. Then I start getting into the drum, or into the effects returns. And if I hit this over, now I've jumped here, but you can see there's the video output 3 and 4, the stereo out. These you kind of want to not have, and so that's why I'm saying go 1, 2, 3, 4 over, and that way they're theoretically over here off to this side, and you're working just in this set of channels here, which corresponds to this dummy track here, all the way over to this right here. And so that's really all you've got to do is just mix here. If there's like, oh, I need to make the kick louder and the snare softer, just go over until you get to kick and snare, adjust it as you need, and then, go back to where you were before. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now, you're back where you were before. You can use these mixes, or the submixes. You'll want to mute the speaking submix when the singing is going on, because Nick tends to sing with his lav mic on when he's coming up and down, so you want to leave that off. Likewise, you'll want to mute the guitarist and the drummer when they're getting up and moving off. You know, things like that. So ideally, you can just mix from these sub mixes, and that gives you pretty good control. All the presets, all the effects are kind of already set. There's like a noise gate on the vocals, but it's pretty low. Compressor, you can just click on the middle of these. This is the EQ. It's that skeuomorphic design where it looks like an old vintage rack unit. And then we've got a second EQ, which is either a 4K boost or 4K cut. And this bottom one is the 4K boost, and the top one is the 4K cut. So if you have it like this, it's flat. If you have it like this, that's good for a lead singer. And if you have it like this, that's good for a backup singer. Again, the idea is that, oh, you know, Nicole is singing backup on this one, and the second person is singing, oh, now this person's backup, and Nicole is lead. You can flip those back and forth in real time and flip that EQ without having to go in here and like grab a knob and twist it. You know, that way it just can be a lot easier to turn on and off. We've got some additional effects. The reverbs are set up here. You can bring these open. You can play around with them if you want, but you know, otherwise just bring the fader down for less and bring it up for more. They should be pretty good the way they are. They're what I've been using. I haven't futzed with the delays too much, but it is nice to throw in the piano and Vox delay to sort of make it a more stereo image. The piano is stereo. This is more useful if it's a keyboard that's only in mono. There is an equalizer and compressor on the drum submix. There's an equalizer, but this equalizer isn't even doing anything. It's just flat. It's just there in case you need to do something. And then there's a second compressor on the vocal submix. And then we've got master compressors, EQ, and stereo imagers on the master buses when we send it to the headphones and to the video. You can see this is duplicated. All right, that's basically it. I know that seems overly simple. There's a lot going on here. Oh, if in case you get rid of the mixer window, just tap this little button here with the mixer, and that'll bring that up. This is really where you need to do all your work. This is the tracking where you would see, you know, chunks of audio that are recorded here. I mean, that's what it's built for originally, but we're not using it for that, so you can really just work in this screen. Last thing, if you accidentally close it, and you just go to File and go to Open, and it's going to ask you for a recent track. Just hit Cancel. It'll take you to this project, and you know, there's like all these different project templates. Just go to My Templates, HPC Worship Service, and hit Choose, and it'll just load it up, and there you go. So no matter how screwed up the settings might have gotten, if you just reload that back up, you'll be back to square one where you were before. And like I said, when Logic loads, it automatically loads this template immediately. If you want to save your settings, just go to Save As up here, and then there's a Recordings, Services, make a new folder. This is the new folder button. Make a new folder, name it, you know, the date, and you know, I just usually save it like AM service or something generic like that, in case you wanted to try and save that if you felt like you really changed a bunch of stuff. But otherwise, you should be good to go with just what's here and use it. All right, I'm going to upload this to YouTube for you to look at. If you've got questions, text me, let me know. More than happy to help deal with it. But as mentioned, the hope is that these tracks right here are really all that you need to use the Surface with, and you can do everything basically here, and just let all of the settings that you've got set here, just basically let them sit the way they are. Your EQ and your gates and your compressors are all independent of what's on the board down there. What's set there only affects the PA and the in-ears, so you're completely independent. That's what's nice about this setup, is that you can do different settings for different